The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Ellerslie, on behalf of the Honourable Minister of Labour and Minister responsible for Democratic Renewal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm honoured to rise and move third reading of Bill 29, the Public Service Employee Relations Amendment Act. This bill proposes changes that will give more public sector employees their constitutional protected freedom to collectively bargain, remove restrictions on what can go to compulsory arbitration, and create more consistency for post-secondary institutions. One proposed change would remove restrictions that prevent 5 classifications of employees from collective bargaining. And the 5 classifications of employees that are currently restricted from collective bargaining are systems analysts, budget officers, hearing officers, auditors, and disbursement control officers. When we look at other jurisdictions in Canada, we saw that it was rare for these types of positions to be excluded from collective bargaining. So by removing restrictions on these employee classifications, we're giving these employees the same rights as their counterparts all across the country. I'd like to point out that removing exemptions from the legislation does not mean employees will be automatically unionized. If this legislation passes, whether affected employees or unionized will need to be determined by employers and unions. Factors such as whether employees are in a supervisory role or have access to sensitive information could influence the decision on whether they should be part of a bargaining unit. And the process for determining whether previously exempt positions will be unionized may vary depending on the employer. Another proposed change would remove restrictions on what can go to arbitration, like pension and job classifications. And these proposed changes align with our essential services legislation, which states that all issues can be considered under collective bargaining. They would also give public sector employees arbitration rules similar to those under the Labour Relations Code, creating more consistency for Albertans. And earlier this month, government staff met with affected employers to discuss the proposed changes to remove restrictions on the 5 classifications of employees and on compulsory arbitration. If passed, these changes would take effect on July 1st of 2019. Another proposed change would move non-academic staff at post-secondary institutions under the Labour Relations Code. And earlier this month, government staff met with post-secondary institutions to discuss this proposed change, and post-secondary institutions provided feedback during the meeting. And they were also given the opportunity to provide written submissions on how the proposed changes would affect them. We heard that this change could have a significant effect on post-secondary institutions and that they may need time to adjust. So in response, we're proposing that this change not take effect until July 1st of 2022, giving post-secondary institutions more than 3 years to adjust. If passed, this change will create consistency for post-secondary institutions once implemented. And it also means non-academic staff will benefit from recent updates to the Labour Relations Code that are not in the Public Service Employee Relations Act. If passed, Bill 29 would bring Alberta in line with the rest of the country by giving more public sector employees the ability to collectively bargain, and give public sector employees similar arbitration rules to other Albertans, and also bring all post-secondary staff under the same labour legislation, creating consistency for the post-secondary sector. I can only hope that all members of this chamber will support this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.